Great.
All right, family. So let's jump right in. So this is the letter that the majority of you should have received if you have a 95 in ELA and a 95 in math, term one or term two. And if you scroll down, please make sure May 26th is the first and only test day for the Hunter exam. Let's stop for a moment. Stop, please don't go. No, stop. Okay. And the website to apply is hunterschools.org, high school admissions. And then you go to the how to apply tab. Then Hunter will send you an exam ticket, information, and instructions. And I don't think you're going to have any issues. They're pretty on top of it. I do want you to be prepared. There are a lot of students who will be taking the exam. They are inviting 5,000 students. That's how many students actually qualified for the test, which is a pretty remarkable number. It's about twice as many as we had in prior years. But then again, you know, the future will tell and we shall see. But yeah, it's pretty competitive. It's actually ultra competitive. Mo, 5,000 students for about 125 seats is that's going to be up there. Okay, so let's keep going. In terms of the application process, everyone should know the application system will close on Wednesday, May 11th at 4 p.m. You have to make sure that you apply as quickly as possible. So a lot of you received the letter yesterday or the day before, and you're really just kind of in shock or celebrating. Just please make sure that you are you know, very on top of your schedule. And by the way, I can't help but laugh that on the left side is nothing but Kweller prep emails. I just want you guys to know that I write all of them and I'm really enjoy that I see your entire inbox flooded with Kweller. Anyway, let's keep going though. All right. Next. Applications is only, it's only for sixth grade students. You have to be a New York City resident. You have to live in the 5 boroughs of New York City. You must attend school in New York City during the application submission. It's a very big deal that you're physically here, that you're at a New York City attending school in the area. So just please don't be confused. You have to do both, okay? Let's keep going. Now, this is very important, okay? Eligible students, okay? Everyone pay attention. Eligible students, everyone's listening, right? You have to listen. Say yes. Somebody say yes. Eligible students must receive at least 1 mark of 95 or higher or the equivalent if using a different grading scale, okay? In both core ELA and core math. If you're using a different grading scale, that's perfectly fine as well, but you just have to make sure that you're both core and core math in any marking period or final mark during 2021-22. So 2022 up until March 1, which for many families is usually term 1 or term 2. Okay, next. Eligible students can't have an 85. It gets worse. Well, no, don't leave. Okay. Eligible students must not have any mark 84 or lower if they're using a different scale in either ELA or math. So basically, they're looking for a 95 or higher. They do not want, what they're not looking for is like an 83 and then like a 97. So that range is not what they're looking for either. So they really want like a consistent 95 students. So eligible students must not have any mark 84 or lower or the equivalent if using a different scale in either core ELA or core math in any marking period or final mark in the same time frame. So this is very important. All right. You should also know that Hunter doesn't select students. Hunter doesn't handpick. Hunter doesn't invite. They really just look at straight scores and they look at straight data. So keep that in mind. Okay. In developing the May 22 eligibility. All right. Let's keep going down a little bit more. Please, Mo. This is the website. Okay. Mo is going to speak about the test, so we can scroll down more. You'll speak about it later. So let's just, I will skim through this. Okay. Mo's going to speak about the sections of the test. We already had this webinar. This is all about Mo here. Okay. These are also just, you know, what to expect in last year's exam. I think that was a great webinar. This is actually Mo from, oh my goodness, 10 years ago. So everyone, please pay attention. Isn't that funny? Here we are. Okay. Do you remember this? That's funny. 10,000 views on YouTube. Who would have ever thought our little amateur video in Forest Hills, Queens, in the Parker Towers? Old times. All right. So everyone pay attention. So I'm gonna tell you, I'm very blessed to have incredible staff that works at Kweller, and I could not ask for a more amazing community of tutors, but it's slim pickings, everyone, because as I'm communicating with you right now, we don't have a tremendous amount of staffing available because it's Ramadan, Easter's coming up, Passover is around the corner. So we really are limited. There are 3 holidays, spring break, and then the majority of our staff is in college and graduate school, and all of the college and graduate school programs have final exams at the end of May, mid-May. So you can only imagine how hard it is right now to staff the program. So this is what we have available. This is what's operating. We have an April 18th start, and Lori is going to be teaching this class via Zoom. There's still this available. There are 2 seats left for this class if you're interested, and it'll go through spring break and then once a week. Let's scroll down a little more, please. And get the color writing book. It's really cool. It's a color book. All right. And then this is the next one. So this is the other option, which is just a straight test review. Test review, it's from beginning to end. Your child will take a full exam, and then we will do the full review. Okay, so let's keep going. We have another option. Let's go here. The other one is right before the test, and right before the test, we will also have a test review. This was really tough to organize, but we did manage to staff this again. To say it was hard is an understatement because again, this is literally when everyone is in finals mode, but we were able to successfully staff. So please keep in mind. So our class sizes, we only have about 10 students per group. So please just keep in mind, this is what we can offer. You can scroll down more. I'm just curious, Mo, do you have any availability left if parents even ask? I don't know. I'm assuming you don't, but I'm asking, just letting you the parents know we have 2 levels of private tutors at Kweller. Again, it's very hard to staff at this time of year between Passover, Easter, Ramadan, spring break, college finals, graduate school finals. What we can do, we shall. So please keep that in mind. It's offered. Mo, can you scroll down a little bit more? Okay, please. We have some good videos and good information. Mo, I think that's everything I want to cover. You're welcome to jump right in from here. Oh, we have a wonderful YouTube channel. Check it out. Look at how cool the cover is. Okay. So we're going to answer the questions in the chat, but that's kind of everything I wanted to cover was our scheduling, what we have available, and then Mo is going to go straight into the presentation so that everyone is aligned. Okay. All right, Mo, go right ahead. Okay.
Hey, thank you, Francis. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mo. I'm one of the tutors here at Kweller. I've been tutoring in the New York City area for like 15 years now, and 10 of those years have been at Kweller, and I've been very, blessed to be able to work with the Kweller family. So I just wanted to get through the test in terms of what are the different sections, what to expect, and also a little bit about what the potential changes in terms of eligibility mean in terms of the amount of students that are going to be taken in, since that's not changing, how that affects the rates of the test, and how, I guess, it's going to be different from years before. So the first thing is that the test is still, to the best of our knowledge, the same in terms of the way that it's organized. It's still 3 sections, all given at once, and the students have 3 hours to complete it. The 3 sections can be grouped into 2 larger chapters of multiple choice exam and the essay. And in terms of the 3 sections, it's math, language arts, which is basically your ELA, your reading comprehension, and then an essay. Now, there are 50 multiple choice reading comprehension questions and 30 multiple choice math questions, and they make up the multiple choice section. So that's down here. And then in terms of the essay, that's separate. But students, again, have 3 hours to take the entirety of the test. It's not that they're given a certain amount of time per section or per part of the exam. In general, what they're looking for is for students who, have above average vocabulary, strong writing and descriptive skills, mental math capabilities, creative problem solving strategies, critical reading skills, and knowledge of grammar rules. The grammar rules used to be a section on the test itself, but now it's just tested throughout the essay. Of course, besides, all of these singular capabilities, they're also looking for a student who can, sit there and have the stamina to get through a 3-hour test. I'm just going to go back to the eligibility for 1 second, and these were highlights from the email that we looked at before. The eligibility has changed since years past. Before COVID, before the pandemic, there was the only way to qualify was they would look at your state test scores from 5th grade. And if you had received a certain cutoff, usually a 95 percentile in both math and reading, then they would allow you to, be eligible to sit for the test. Now, since then, things have changed, right? Because there was a lot of iffiness about statewide testing because of the pandemic and a few other things. And so they've opened eligibility by making it open to what they now have marked out as getting a 95 in a core ELA or math without getting a 84 or below or equivalent. Now, for students who aren't in those grading systems, I would assume that you would still apply through the Hunter website, and they may ask for extra documentation either from your school or from your guidance counselor's office. My best advice to you, if you haven't gotten a letter like this, either via email or in the mail from your guidance counselor about eligibility, right? So I'm highlighting this right here. If you haven't gotten something like that yet, then I would reach out to your school, the guidance counseling office, as well as start the Hunter application online and try to get those in as soon as possible. I know that we've talked about the May 11th deadline to apply, but just in case there's any hiccups on the way and you need to give in more documentation, you want to give yourself more time and room to make sure that you can secure all of that documentation, get the application in before that May 11th deadline. And of course, with spring break coming, a lot of schools might be taking a break. It might not be as easy to reach out to your principal or your guidance counselor and gather all those documents that are needed. So the sooner we all get on this, the better it is. You all have already been proactive in just coming to this webinar to start things off. So just keep that up and make sure that you see the application all the way through. Now, after the application, all there's really left is the test, right? There's no interview round, there's no essays to submit online, there's no other additional application to put in. This again is just like a breakdown of the individual steps you need to go through in terms of applying online. Go to this site right here, read the testing eligibility and how to apply section before you start an application so that you know all the information that you'll need to provide. Find the application link on how to apply. I think they send you an ID code to your email, and make sure that the email that you use is your own, not your child's, right? Because you're going to have to be communicating with them
Can you make, Mo, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you make it much larger? I want to make sure everyone sees this extremely clearly so that we all know how to walk through the steps. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So after you go through the Hunter website listed here, you have to read the testing eligibility, which will tell you whether or not you're eligible, especially if your school hasn't reached out to you or you haven't gotten an email from Hunter. Go to the how to apply section and make sure that when you go to that section and click on that link, you're going to be asked to give an email address. Make sure that this address is a trusted sender in your email, and also that you're able to have access to it and get the notifications. Now, when you fill out the application, you can save and go back and edit it within 24 hours or else you'll lose it and have to start over. And make sure that you know the name and like the information of how to contact their current email address of your current middle school counselor, because they may be in communications. There are no fees for this entrance exam, which again means that there's going to be more people than ever applying. And you will get an email once the application is verified with your school, with your child's school in terms of their eligibility. So remember that it'll stay pending. And if it's pending, that doesn't mean that your child can come in and take the test. You have to make sure that it's verified beforehand. And I would constantly be on top of it, sending them an extra email every now and then to check in. Because remember, the deadline for the application is May 11th, and the test is May 26th. That's a 15-day, a little bit over 2-week turnaround. So you need to make sure that your application goes from pending to verified within that time. Of course, if there are any kind of testing accommodations that need to be had, you have to formally request it within the box of the application. I'm not entirely sure what an accommodation would require, so I'm sure that this Hunter will reach out to you and ask for the proper documentations on that end. I hope that's clear to everyone. I saw a question earlier about will Hunter reach out, can you address how eligibility is determined for a 6th grade student newly admitted to a DOE school without any grades in term 1 or term 2? I think that's a very specific situation that you would probably need to talk to Hunter specifically about. So I would reach out to them very soon, within like tomorrow, as soon as possible, just because after this Friday, they're going to go on spring break for a week. And so communication with the school will be very hard to get back.
And the email that you see on the bottom, this would probably be the best, hchsubmit@hccs.hunter.cuny.edu. So just keep in mind that if there's an ultra specific scenario that doesn't apply to what's here, keep that in mind. I think Mo, I'm going to say this and Mo is just going to reiterate. There's another question. My son goes to a private school. I never got the letter. Do not wait for that letter because just apply, upload your grades, get the counselor report. And Mo, can you please just reiterate, please?
Yeah, I just saw
Just
that.
don't wait around for the letter. Can you just speak more about that, please?
Yeah, of course. I just saw that as well. So once you have applied, I would make sure that you have a verified email that your application went through and your application has been verified. And then after that, I would call to make sure. Just because that's the type of person I am, I have to be proactive about it and I have to confirm it. Just because you don't want to take a risk, right? Like we said, the test is only on May 26th. There are no makeup dates. And if something goes wrong in the system, they're not going to put the blame on creating a makeup date just for your child. They're going to be like, well, the time is up, the test has already been taken. So I would try to be on top of it to the best of my ability to make sure. Yep, exactly.
And if you applied to private school and you're applying from private school now, you definitely should apply. And we're so happy that you are proactive. You need to make sure that your school's counselor is also on top of things. Because they might say, I don't know, or I do know, but there is a specific counselor report. Also, if you're homeschooled, there's a specific report card that you need to produce. So you just really want to be on top of that. So please don't delay if you need to, communicate with your counselor and coordinate everything at one time. Don't be shy. This is not the time to be back. Okay, so please make sure. The private school, you will self-report the report card and the grades for eligibility, and then the private school will verify. There's a separate form. There's a school guidance counselor reports, and that's the verification process. So you report and then they verify eligibility, and that verification will take place with your child's school. And you need to have the right contact information so that everyone's on the same page. Okay. In terms of having a 504 plan or an IEP or some type of test accommodation, you need to request that on the original Hunter High School application. So please keep that in mind as well. Mo, feel free to add and answer any questions that I may have not had a chance to respond to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to add on that in my experience, I've had great guidance counselors and then not so great ones throughout my academic career. My advice is always just assume that you don't have the one that's always on top of it. I understand being a guidance counselor is very difficult. There's a lot of students to maintain, and aside from the students' one-on-one needs, there's other things that you have to do within the school. So I would always just kind of like hound my guidance counselor. I remember when I was in sixth grade, my school guidance counselor in the sixth grade, in the middle school I went to, did not know Hunter existed as a high school. I know we're talking about like the early 2000s here, but still, like that fear of like them not being informed about this situation is something that I would still, be wary of as a parent. So, like Francis said, I would not just make sure with Hunter that they got your form, but that your guidance counselor is writing back and communicating with Hunter with the form that they're supposed to get back to. So, I know it's a lot of work to be communicating over these next few weeks, but hey, this is a kind of like a once in a lifetime opportunity that you don't want to pass up for your child, right? Okay, I think that's all of the questions we've answered in terms of eligibility for the test. The other ones are, I think, more test specific. So we're going to get through them as we cipher through the test and what it contains. So I'll move on to that now. So the test section, so the language arts section is just essentially reading comprehension. The thing I want to stress here that most students have trouble with is that most of the reading, if not all of it, is fiction and poetry. And so usually the students have a pretty fine time with the fiction, but it's the poetry that stresses them out. It's because either they haven't had too much exposure to poetry, or they have a hard time deciphering the figurative language and thinking about different interpretations that could come out of a poem. And so one of the things that I think we all can do at home with the kids is whenever you have them, just find a poem online that's around grade level, somewhere between 6th and 8th grade, maybe even some 9th grade poetry that would be in any kind of high school curriculum, and read it to them. Just read it with them and try to, gauge and ask them questions. Hey, what do you think this means? What do you think this line is referring to? Do you notice something different about the way this poem's organized compared to another one? Do you see any kind of scheme of rhymes within the poem, right? Getting that part of their brain working, which notices or knows to look out for those things, is a big part of the challenge. And I would say that for poetry and reading comprehension in general, it's not really the questions that trip the students up. It's more so whether or not they understood the passage. Because if they understood the passage or the poem, then the questions become not that difficult. The only reason the questions seem challenging is because they didn't really understand what was going on in terms of the poem or the passage to begin with. So I think that's really a very important trait. Another one is make sure that they're reading bodies of work that are above grade level, because that'll improve their vocabulary. It'll improve the way that they see sentences being written. And as a result, their writing will improve because of that as well. I remember when I was young, around their age in 5th and 6th grade, a lot of my writing style came from like books and passages that I read, and I really liked the way the author did something. And so I kind of adopted and borrowed these different techniques and made them mine in terms of my progress as a writer. And that's something that's continued throughout my lifetime. It hasn't just stopped at 6th grade. And I'm sure that a lot of the things that hopefully, knock on wood, if they get into Hunter, that's something that they will progress through as well within English class. In terms of the math section, these are just a list of some of the types of math questions that will come up in terms of the topics that are there. But of course, there's going to be many more. The important things to remember is that they're not allowed the use of a calculator, and that being able to do mental math is great, but also being able to work efficiently and organize the information is even better. Because, a lot of the Hunter test is known for tricky word problems, and so the students really need to kind of hone in on how to organize through all of that information that they're getting in the word problems and figure out the most efficient way to do it, right? It's a time test, and time management is another key component of the test as well. In terms of the essay section, so we'll talk about the essay section more in depth near the end as well, but the essay that's given to them, there have been different iterations of it throughout the years. Sometimes it's just a personal question like, write about your favorite superhero or your everyday superhero. So it's like someone that the test taker knows that they're going to write about in great detail. Other times their essay questions are specific to New York City. Sometimes they're not. In the past, I think there was one year where they were given an option between 2 or 3 choices for essay prompt. So the students got to pick which prompt that they did. In other years, there would be a passage that the prompt would refer back to within the actual test, but you didn't have to read the prompt per se to answer the question. So it's just some kind of relation or like callback to a reading passage that was already on the test in terms of the topic. Now, there's no required length for the essay, but you are given a certain amount of space. You don't have to fill all of it out. In my experience, if you fill out 80% of it, that means you've done a great job. Think about the space that you're given. And, we talk about this with students a lot, especially when they get older. But again, when they apply to college, this is something that holds true as well. As a writer, if you're given a task and you're asked to do it in 650 words, I'm referring to college essays here, then part of being a good writer is being able to do the task that's asked of you in the space given to you. With that being said, on the Hunter test, they usually give you about 1 page and 3/4 of a page to do it. That means that they think that that amount of space is ample for you to write a good essay. And so as a writer, you should be able to accomplish that. Now, what happens if you go over? Well, that's not really allowed, because see, what happens is when the essays are graded, that page gets scanned with the amount of the appropriate space that was given to you. And anything that's written elsewhere will not be scanned in. So for that reason, they'll cut you off and wherever you end up within that amount of length given. So usually essays are, I would say, 4 to 5 paragraphs. I lean more towards the 4-paragraph side of things, just because I think that's a better way to organize each body paragraph to have a good amount of detail in them, right? And in years past, the way the essay grading worked is, so I'm going to go back to scoring and selection here. This information is going to be changed based off of how many students are now eligible. In years past, there were somewhere about 25 let me actually write this part out. Somewhere about 2,500 to 3,000 students who are eligible to take the test. And the top 500 multiple choice scorers would move on to the next section, where out of the top 500, they would take about 150, 125 to 150 students. Now, they're not increasing the number of seats at Hunter, right? So now the system looks different because it's not over 3,000, it's over 5,000. So you have to ask yourself, what does that mean? Are they still going to take the top 500 multiple choice scorers and then only look at those essays? I would assume so, because looking at the essays is probably the most strenuous and time-consuming part of the application, right? Just because there's more students taking the test, it doesn't mean that the number of essays that they're going to read necessarily goes up. So I would work under the assumption that they're still going to look at the top 500 multiple choice scorers. Now, what does that mean? Since more people are eligible, that means that the chances of the multiple choice cutoff being higher increases because there's more students who are taking it. But on the other hand, the other thing to think about is that the cutoffs are different now. Students who, let's say, would have gotten 95 on both their ELA and math core statewide tests, that's no longer the way that they look at the eligibility. Instead, they look at your grades in school. And so those are different kinds of students, right? Having sustained grades in school doesn't always translate to statewide tests, and being a good statewide test taker doesn't always translate to doing well in class for a sustained period of time. So the profile of students who are taking the test are a little bit different. If I were in any of the students' shoes right now, what would I do? Well, I would look at the date. It's April 12th, and the test is May 26th. I have a bit over 6 weeks, I believe, to do my very best. So I'd spend the next 6 weeks studying for the test to the best of my ability based off what I know. That's really all you can do, right? You can't really control how 4,999 other students do. You can only kind of control what you can. And that's why, you all as parents are being proactive in the sense of coming to this workshop, try to gain this information and pass it along to your children. So that's kind of where we are with that. Moving on. This is usually my first lesson. I'm going to give this PDF to Frances so she'll have access to it, and she can then disseminate it to everyone as needed. This is something that I've shown time in and time out again, tutoring all kinds of standardized tests throughout the years, because reading comprehension is a staple no matter what kind of standardized test you take. So I'm going to go through this quickly, but then I'm going to go through a passage where I utilize a lot of these techniques. So in reading, you read the passage first, not the questions. Don't read, skim, focus on the major details, ignore the minor ones. Annotate, which means take notes on the side, right? And remember, those notes only need to make sense to you because it's done for yourself, no one else. As you're annotating, make sure that you're not just rewriting what you're reading, because that's a big waste of time. You want to dumb it down and keep it simple and short. That's what the acronyms DID and KISS stand for. The IT is, of course, the passage, right? Whatever you're reading at the time, or the poem. You should be annotating paragraph to paragraph, except when a paragraph is either too short or too complicated. If it's it's too long or too complicated. If it's too long, you want to divvy it up into sections. And if it's too complicated, you want to slow down and also split it up into sections. Whenever possible, predict questions that you already know the answers to. By reading the passage, whenever you notice something happening in the passage that's repeated often, you know that there's going to be a question about it. That's why there's so much repetition behind it. Always pay attention to point of view, and these are just the different types of point of view, right? First person, second person, third person, and what words to look out for in the passage to know which one it is. On this section, we have the questions, right? Because reading comprehension is made up of two parts: reading the actual passage and then answering the questions. These are just a small number of the types of questions that show up, right? Inference, detail, vocabulary, and context, main idea, cause and effect, not except questions in line or paragraph questions. Regardless of the question type, all must be answered using passage-based evidence. So that's the way that they keep it fair, right? With a level playing field. If I've read a book and there's a passage about that book, I shouldn't have an advantage just because I read the whole book, right? That's why the only information that can be tested is what's in the passage that's given, the excerpt. I always say this: you are your own worst enemy in doing reading comprehension, and it's because of doubt. I'm sure all of us have had this moment happen at one time or another. We're going through the choices. We look at A, B, C, D, or E. We know that the answer is probably going to be B, but then we second guess ourselves and think, D is not a bad answer either. And then we keep on flip flopping between the two and we pick the wrong answer. So these are just ways to kind of like avoid those things. An answer is not correct, even if it's true, because it has to answer the question being asked, right? That's like writing an essay that's off topic. It's a good, well-written essay, but it's not answering the prompt. So then that would be bad. If part of an answer choice is false, the whole answer is wrong. And extreme answers are almost always wrong, and extreme answers are almost never right. And I highlight always and never because that's how you can tell something is an extreme answer, because it uses those words. The whole reason why extreme answers are not likely to be correct on the test is because they can be proven wrong very easily. When you're stuck between two choices, become very hypercritical about what makes them different and how one is going to be better than the other. And whenever possible, try to ignore the answer choices and think of the correct answer in your own head. Then go looking for it. So what I like to do when I'm testing is I'll cover the multiple choice answers and I'll read the question and answer it on my own based off my annotations of the passage. And I'll go back and look for my answer within the multiple choice. Whenever you're doing cause and effect questions, always go direct. Think about what was the immediate reason why something had occurred rather than what was the root of the problem. And then in terms of not/except questions, utilize POE, which stands for process of elimination. So like in this example, in between four choices, if they said all the following was mentioned in the passage except for which one, in order for me to figure out that B is the answer, I first have to get evidence that, A was mentioned in line 4 through 12, C was mentioned in line 15, and D was mentioned in line 32. And then I can, circle off on B with confidence. Okay. Well, now we'll get these practices into a passage. So this one's actually a poem. So I'll go through it with you all. So reading passage A, dreams. All of your sensations become dull, your eyelids feel heavy and they begin to droop, your head bobs and your thoughts become less cohesive, loose, convoluted. So I see cohesives underlined, so they're probably going to ask me what that means. So if your thoughts are becoming less cohesive, that means they're becoming loose and convoluted. So cohesive means like put together, because it's not loose, right? So it's the opposite of loose and convoluted, so not loose. And this is just saying someone is tired or sleepy. And our poem being called Dreams, it makes a lot of sense in context. The aches in your thighs and chest become more acute as you lie down on the bed with the fresh coolness of the untouched blanket. It looks so inviting, as if it were calling you in its embrace. So sleep looks good, right? Your bed is inviting you. Your untouched blanket is calling you. Its embrace, it's very inviting, right, to go to bed. But you know better. So there's a change because of the but. So we need to pay attention here. There's no such thing as a tranquil pause. How many restless nights must you endure, where you will twist and turn, engulfed in the torment in your mind, replaying all the micro events of your day, your mistakes and slips all evident, you as the only viewer. So this twist and turn means you're having trouble sleeping. And replaying events of your mind is kind of like anxiety, and you seem to be having bad dreams. Oops. So all of these notes are for me, and so that I can follow along to the passage as a whole. But then a glimpse of hope, so another change. Whenever there's a change in writing, I always make a big deal out of it, just because changes in text are usually turning points in the story or the poem, and they're asked about in questions. But then a glimpse of hope. Before you fully realize it, you're transported. The sun has risen. Natural light envelops you. So now the sun is good, natural, and since the sun has risen, right, natural light envelops you. So this word kind of like wraps around you. You pause and think, what was it? What were those fragments? So the fragments are referring to what just passed, right? The dreams. But you have no immediate nor specific recollection. Your mind is once again fuzzy and slow, so you're groggy, right? Getting up. It was just a dream, you repeat to yourself. Your new reality is the day ahead, filled with hope and possibility. So you kind of look past the dream and you're looking onward. The road suddenly widened, broad enough to encompass all your intentions. So you're now in a positive mood because day ahead looks good. And with that, I just always, before I moving on to the questions, I just take a look at what I've read and look back at my annotations and make sure I understand what's going on. So our narrator is tired. They're things are looking fuzzy, right? And they're not put together. They're loose and convoluted. Looking at their bed, sleep looks good. They're tired, right? Their bed looks inviting. But you know better, right? So, but there's an issue with them trying to fall asleep. They have trouble sleeping. They're really anxious, replaying bad parts of the day. They're having bad dreams. But then things change. The sun rises up. It's all around them. They can see the natural light. They think back to those dreams, but don't really remember them. They're groggy getting up, but they're in a better mood now because they have a day ahead that looks good. Okay. Vague enough, but enough to get me through like whatever I need to answer the questions. So now we'll go through each of them individually. So for number 1, it says, as used in line 3, cohesive most nearly means what? So I go back, I've written this down, put together, not loose. So I'm just looking for put together, not loose. Best answer is formed, right, as we're going through the choices. The first stanza suggests that the narrator is, so we're going back to the first stanza. We already wrote down tired. So I'm looking for tired. And so I would say worn is the best word out of all of them. And I want everyone here to follow along. Make sure you're proactive about it. Energetic is opposite. Lazy, there's nothing that says that they're lazy. I don't think they're miserable just yet. Tired and miserable are not the same thing. Overworked. We don't know if they've been worked too much. It just means they could be tired from just having a long day. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were overworked. We don't know what they were doing. So again, making assumptions is really bad when you're doing comprehension. You should have evidence to back everything up. The second stanza suggests that the narrator views the untouched blanket with what? Well, they find that the untouched blanket is inviting, right? Because it's calling them in to like kind of give them a hug in its embrace. So it should be something positive. I'm looking for a positive word. Fear is gone. Silliness doesn't make sense. Suspicion and confusion doesn't. And relief is a positive word. The question the narrator poses in line 12 supports the view that sleep is what? So let's go back to line 12. How many restless nights must you endure where you will twist and turn? So sleep is something that's not happening easily to them. So D, does not come easily. Is extremely valuable? No. Is physically painful? I don't think anything here is physical. The twisting and turning because they can't fall asleep, it's all mental. Comes after exercise, is unnecessary. None of those make sense. Line 17 suggests that one's mistakes and slips are what? So here, when they talk about mistakes and slips, they say you as the only viewer. So the only person that's noticing this is our narrator. So it's something that's only noticed by them. So they're not public records. So it would be the opposite of that, so largely private. As used in line 21, envelops most nearly means, and I think we wrote down envelope means wraps around you, surrounds. So that would be E. The narrator would most likely define fragments as what? Well, fragments are those dreams, right, that they can't recall. So bursts of pain, no. Short gasps, no. Sharp objects, no. Between old memories and fleeting images, well, old memories, if we go back, but you have no immediate nor specific recollection. So this is telling you that it's not a memory. It's confirming that the answer is not going to be E, but rather the answer has to be A, fleeting images. The poem ends with the tone of what? Well, the poem ends with the person looking forward to the next day. So, and they're looking forward to it in a positive way. They're hopeful, so it's anticipation. And so I hope this was pretty straightforward. You also how kind of I went through the poem itself as well as the questions. And I hope that was helpful. Does anyone have any questions on that before we move on to math? Okay, great. So as I move on to math, again, I find that rather than going over the individual topics, examples speak volume about the type of math questions that Hunter is looking at, as well as all the different ways that someone's able to do it. So I have here 3 questions, but realistically, they're more like 2 because the last 2 questions are based off the same image. So we'll go through each one. The first one up top is a classic Hunter question. It's about organization, right? So this is asking you, what is the 143rd digit in the following pattern? You have your number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and you keep on going, right? So of course I could write them all out and then count to 143 and I would get it right. But of course, on a test where things are timed, that's probably not the most efficient way to do it. So we have to organize. And so I start thinking to myself, what makes this difficult? It's the fact that the numbers don't repeat any kind of traditional pattern, but you have to find a way to count them effectively. So from 0 to 9, I notice that the kind of numbers that these are, they're single digit numbers. And there's 10 of them. And since they're single digit, I can multiply them by 1. And so I know that this is going to give me the 10th digit. So the place where I ended, the 9, is the 10th digit. So I'm going to just write that down. I want to get to the 143rd. Now, I know that every single number after that, 10 to 99, is going to be double digit. And then whatever amount of numbers I have, I'm going to multiply by 2. I have the first 10 digits. So if I can get the next 130 digits, that would be great. Because then altogether, I would have 140 digits. And that's very close to 143rd. Does everyone see how I'm organizing here? So I need to think to myself, now working backwards, what times 2 gives me 130? Well, that would be 65. The next thing I need to think about is 10 to what number is going to give me 65 numbers? Well, if I do 10 plus 65, I'll get 75. But that's not the correct answer. Because the way you count numbers is, if you're including 10 in that number, we're doing what's known as an inclusive count. And how do you count things inclusively? You have to subtract the difference and then add one more. That's a rule. So I'm going to just write this down on the side if anyone here is not familiar with the counting principles here. In terms of counting, if you're counting numbers exclusively, so I'll do these numbers so it's easy to see, 0 to 5. You're going to do 5 minus 0, which is 4, and you're going to subtract 1. That's going to give you 3. Sorry, 5 minus 0 is 5, subtract 1, and that's going to give you 4. So there are 4 numbers between 0 and 5 without counting 0 and 5, because that's what exclusive means. Now, if I do inclusive, 0 to 5, that's going to be 5 minus 0, which is 5, and you add 1. That's going to give me 6. And that makes sense, because if you count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in exclusive, I don't count the 0 and 5, and that's just 4 numbers. But in inclusive, I count the 0 and 5, so that is just 6 numbers. So with that being said, I have to think to myself, I have to do some number minus 10 plus 1 to equal 65. If I subtract 10 and add 1, that's the same thing as taking a number and subtracting 9 to get 65, which means that my number must be 74. So that's how I figured out that this number must be 74. So what that tells me is, let me just create some room here. 74, this 4 in 74 is my 140th digit. But I want the 143rd. So 75 gives me 141, 142, and the 7 in 76 gives me the 143rd. And that's my answer. Does anyone have any questions as to how I organized it and went through this? Okay, great. I'm going to just go on and move down to the next 2 questions in math. So here in
And
this,
Mo, I just want to make sure you're checking the chat box also, so that everyone's, if there are any questions, you'll go through it.
yeah, I'm constantly checking it.
Okay.
Okay. So with this next one, 71 and 72, will these techniques be taught in the sessions? Of course, right? Because how else would the students be able to get through the tests, right? If they don't understand all the most efficient ways to do it, they will have a hard time trying to finish the entirety of the test. All right, I'm just going to continue through this. And then after these 2 math questions, I'm just going to wrap things up on multiple choice and quickly focus on the essay. Use the diagram below for questions 71 and 72. ABCD is a square divided into equal right angle steps, and A to E is 12 units long. So I'm just going to change colors here. So we know that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sections that are 12 each. And so this is going to be 12 times 8, or 96. Now the question's asking me, what's the perimeter of AEFCD in units? So what I want to show everyone here is AEFCD looks like this outline. Now, of course, this side, since it's a square, is also going to be 96. This is where most students get stuck after this amount of progress. What I want to show everyone is every one of these boxes that are laid out horizontally, if you put it together, it's going to make the same exact shape as this side A to B, which is going to be 96. And if you do the same thing with all of the vertical boxes on this side, you're going to create another line that's going to also be 96. So really, this is just going to be the same perimeter as this square, which is just 96 times 4. And to do the math quickly, we know that this is going to be 4 times 90 is 360, plus 24, 384. Answer choice E. And so out of between the two questions here, 73 and 74, this is the one that most students don't take too long. They understand the technique quite easily and are able to apply it. The next one, students have a lot of various ways of doing it. And I found that not every single method is necessarily the best way to do it. So that's the one I really wanted to go over for number 74. So for 74, it's asking you what percentage of the area ABCD is the figure EBF. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to erase all the work from before and focus on the shape anew. And so we know that 12 times 8 is 96, but now the shape that we're going to be focusing on is this part in green. And what I hope is clear is by cutting it up, right, we know that our squares can be broken down into 64 tiny squares that are 8 by 8. So 64 8 by 8 squares are present in this shape ABC. If I were to take a line and cut the square in half, then it would be 50%, right? A, B to C, triangle ABC would be 1/2 of the entire figure, right, of the square. But what's happening is each of these spots in blue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they make up half of one of those 8 by 8 squares, 64 of which exist in the entire shape. Well, since there are 8 halves here, that means there are 4 large squares. So I'm going to take from 1/2, I have to subtract out 4 out of 64, which is 1/2 minus 1/16, which is going to be 7 over 16. And this is probably the most efficient way to do it, because 7 over 16, if we divide, it's going to be 64, 6, carry down a 0, 3, and we can stop. We can stop at that point because there's only one answer that starts off with the 4 and then the 3, and that's answer choice C, and we're done. And so students have a lot of different ways of trying to break it down, and I find that this is probably the most efficient way to do it. And they don't see that necessarily all the time. And so helping them trying to look at these shapes and think in this manner is very, very important. Okay. Before I move on to the essay, there is one thing that I wanted to speak to, and that is in the multiple choice, right? I'm just going to write it down here. In reading comprehension, there are 50 questions, and in math, there are 30 questions, but each one is still out of 50 points, which means that every single reading question is worth 1 point, whereas every single math question is worth 5/3 of a point. Now, what does that mean? That means that each individual math question is worth more than any individual reading question. That's why you can't just be really good at reading and get like a 48 in that section and think that that'll be what's going to get you in. They're really looking for a well-rounded student at the end of the day. Okay. And that's solely, again, for the multiple choice. Okay. If there's no other questions on the multiple choice, I want to quickly move into the essay. In terms of the Hunter essay, I've always thought of it as a personal narrative. The most important thing that your essay has to do is, I know I've numbered these things as 1, 2, and 3, but that's just because we have to number them. But this is more like a 1A, 1B, 1C type scenario where all 3 of these things are just as important. So the first thing is, make sure you answer the prompt. If you write a fantastic essay, but it's off topic, then you can't follow simple directions. And Hunter is, it's a free school that gives quality education that a lot of other parents are willing to leave private schools for. So that should speak volumes as to its capability of, educating a student. And, they don't ask for, what they're looking for is they want to be able to invest in a student who can at the very least follow instructions. So answering the prompt is very important. The second is, this is your time to showcase your ability as a writer. That means, utilizing, writing skills such as being well organized, thoughtful, being descriptive, using figurative language, having good, clear transitions, perfect use of, high level vocabulary, the proper use of it, right? The varied sense of sentence structure. And this is where there's a lot of stress put on show, don't tell, right? The third one is, again, there's no interview for Hunter and no external essay to turn in with the application. So usually the question that they ask in some way or form is a way for them to get to know about you. So sometimes they'll outright ask a personal question, and other times they might not, but from the question, they'll be able to gauge what type of person you are or what's going on in your head, right? For example, I think an essay question a few years ago was, compare your favorite object to a person. So then they got a sense of what this student finds valuable in their everyday objects based off who they're comparing it to. And these are just some kind of, final tips on in terms of writing a good personal narrative. I'm going to begin with a catchy hook. The people who are reading your essay are Hunter College High School English and Social Studies teachers, because those two departments are usually where most of the writing happens. You need to make sure that you clearly answer the prompt and outline your essay in the first paragraph, which should be relatively short. Separate events or thoughts into paragraphs so that they're not convoluted and jumbled up into one another. Beware of sentence structure, beware of word choice, right? Get rid of dead words. Have a clear conclusion, which should restate the words from your prompt and your essay as a whole, and bring back, refer back to the hook to create a circle and, nicely tie your essay up in a bow. I think those are all important techniques to have as a writer. The other thing is, understand that the Hunter teachers also know this. This is the Hunter test, or any kind of essay that you do in a test, is asking for your best possible first draft. To be a proper writer, you go through many, many drafts, many edits, but this is, you only have 3 hours to do the entirety of the multiple choice and this essay. So they're not expecting super polished work, but they're expecting, to have the basics down and down very well, and then the ideas. One of the best essay exercises that I think families can do at home is ask questions, right? Like essay questions, give your child a prompt and think about what they would write about, and just talk it through, asking how they would, plan it out. It's like a 10-minute conversation, and it can make a big difference, because in my experience, the hardest part of test prep for this entire test is that decision that the student is going to make at the end of the day, which is what their essay is going to be about, right? We can teach them all the writing techniques. We can tell them what are good topics to write about, but it's up to them when they read an essay prompt, right? It's not going to be mom or dad behind them, or Francis or me or any of the other tutors. We're going to tell them, hey, this is a good idea, this isn't, right? So that decision making is what needs to be taken care of. Who grades this test? It's done by the Hunter College High School teachers for the essay, and a Scantron bubble sheet machine will go through the multiple choice. And so these are just general test taking strategies to use on the Hunter test. And we have many more the week of the test. Francis has a big, list of resources and things to do the week leading to the test, in terms of meditation, review, how to not, overwork yourself or stress yourself too much. I can't, emphasize this enough. This test, like many other tests that you will take, is going to be a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? So cramming 1 week before the test is not the way to start. by coming here tonight and getting this information, you guys have already gotten a head start. And so continuing down that road and prepping from now till May 26th is the best that you can do to best prepare yourself and put yourself in a position to succeed when it comes to this test. Any other questions for me?
Everyone, let's take a moment to give Mo Khan a gigantic thank you because he's been such a source. Mo Khan is responsible for so many of the exams and development and materials. And oh my goodness, my mental health. I think that's really says a lot for all of these years navigating Kweller Prep in Queens and Manhattan and the pandemic. And well, look at where we are today, doing this virtually for families. So everyone, can we please give Mo a gigantic thank you in the chat so that we really take a moment and just really say thank you. It really means a lot that you're here and that you're doing this. And thank you so much. It's so important for me to acknowledge this. Thank you for putting up with me for over 10 years. And not firing me, your boss, because that really says a lot. I'm really honored that we've had such a long standing relationship, a mutual respect for one another. And of course, I just realized I'm not on the video, but I'm good. And who wants to see my cute little doggy? You want to go off the share screen, Mo? Let's go off the share screen. Who wants to see Goldie?
Yeah.
Who wants to see the color doggy? Goldie, come here. Here, Goldie. Let's go see a cute little doggy. Come here. Let me go. Can I spotlight myself, Mo? Can you do that for me, or I do it? Okay, ready, everyone? Hold on, guys. Check it out. Am I able to spotlight? Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. I've been here for 12 hours. Okay, go. Let's go. Hi, Goldie. Is Goldie the cutest? Isn't she the best? We can't wait to take Goldie back in the college tours and the high school nights, and we can't wait to do this more in person, which is going to be an amazing opportunity for us as well. Mo, thank you so much. Something that I really enjoy doing to close up the meeting is I'm going to unmute everyone, and we're going to count to 3, and we're going to say thank you to Mo. So we're going to count to 3. I'm going to unmute everyone. Ready? So I'm going to ask everyone to unmute, and then we're going to count to 3, and we say thank you, and that's it. We're going to close up the meeting. Okay? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Thank you so much. Mo, I'm also aware, and through my children's babysitter, that today is Ramadan and today's a very special holiday. And what are you doing? You are fasting all day long and having this webinar after. So I really want to take a moment to say thank you. Yeah, Mo did not eat all day. And here he is right now running a webinar seamlessly and, just being Mo Khan, which is how he is. All right, I'm so grateful, and it's really like it's just an honor to know you. I'm just so blessed, like I'm so lucky. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening. Check out the Kweller Prep classes. They were so hard to coordinate and arrange with my staff. Oh my goodness, I don't know if Laura's gonna hear this one day, but she actually said no like 4 times, and then I begged. And she is going to be working over spring break. So she will be teaching the writing class because I really could not even find anyone with Easter, Passover, Ramadan, spring break. It was very, very hard to staff these upcoming classes. So please keep that in mind. And we're really looking forward to having a great program. Good luck. Thank you, Mo. Thank you so much. And everyone, please just stay safe and, remember that we are a community, and we really just want the best, and the best for your children, and for the safety as well as today was a very tough series of news events as well taking place. So everyone, please stay safe and sound, and we wish you all very well and a restful and calm evening. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm finally going home. Say bye to Goldie. Bye, Goldie. Bushy bushy.
Thank you, everyone, for spending your Tuesday night here with us. I hope this was very helpful to everyone here. Thank you again for your support. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. And, best of luck. These 6 weeks are going to be tough, but I'm sure that if we put in the work, everyone here will, whether you get into Hunter or not, these will be a very rewarding 6 weeks at the end.
Absolutely. Doesn't Goldie look so good during the webinar? She's so ready. Goldie, do you know that we're talking about you? Look at this face. Look at how she's ready, right? All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great night. Bye, everybody. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.